Good evening. Welcome to the Council Committee of the Whole, Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. And we will call this meeting to order at 5:07 p.m. And we're here at the Council Chambers at 514 Windsor Avenue, Diamond Valley. Our open portion of the meeting will begin at 6 p.m. So we will do our land acknowledgement. The town of Diamond Valley acknowledges that we are on the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7, including the Blackfoot Confederacy members, Siksika, Piikani, Kainai First Nations, the Stoney Nakoda, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley First Nations, the Dene Tsuut'ina First Nations, and the Métis Nation Regions 3. So can I get someone to adopt the agenda, please?
Yeah, the agenda, yeah, correct. No
How's-
consent agenda.
Councillor Tully gives us that. All in favor? Now we will move into close. We have 4 items in close. It's a berm flood mapping FOIP section 21, items 1C 25. Item 1, land purchase FOIP 24. Item 1C 25. Item 1, regional services update FOIP 25. Item 1C, and offsite levies update FOIP 24. Item 1C. So can I get somebody to go to give us a move into close, please? Councillor Gordon gives us that. All in favor? And we go into close. So we'll go into open. And I think we have a recommendation to close. I believe that was Councillor.
You capture my intent? To have planning review the fee schedule and bring it back to us in July for review to be implemented in 2026. But I don't know if you need that in the motion.
I would recommend the planning fee schedule.
Planning fee schedule?
Report back in July.
Sorry, did I say June? Did I say July? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The planning fee schedule?
Yeah, I think we can turn that into a clear motion.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. I don't think we have any delegations tonight, so we'll move into bylaws and policies. So 5.1, procedure of bylaw, proposed amendments. And this goes to Verna.
Make it big.
So council, we have a couple of things that we need to deal with and a couple of things I would like to discuss. So the bylaw needs to be updated to include the consent agenda. And also because it's an election year, I would recommend that we take a look at our public engagement sections of this bylaw. I think they could be tweaked maybe. And public hearing sections need to be amended because of an MDA amendment, but also Mayor Crane would love to have it streamlined. So we've proposed a section to change that up. And once that is finalized, we'll create a new script for those. We're proposing to color code it for you so that if there's no applicants, you, for example, won't read anything in blue. If the applicants are there, you'll read whatever color it ends up being. So that might make your day a little bit better when you have a lot of public hearings in one night. So for the consent agendas, council wanted to keep going ahead with those, and so we wanted to actually include a section in the procedure bylaw to make it really clear that when you adopt items on the consent agenda, that those items are accepted and adopted by council and they're now part of your repertoire of documentation, whatever that looks like. And just to clarify the process for new council members coming in, that anybody has the right to remove something off consent, move it to a regular agenda for conversation. And so just, it's really quite simple. If everybody's okay with that proposed section, we'll put that into a formal amendment to the procedure bylaw. Is there any questions on that section?
Counselor Tom.
I'm great with this. Well done. I do have a question though. So for example, Counselor Martin at our last regular meeting requested that the minutes be moved into the regular meeting and not really for discussion. It was just an admin error on the minutes. Can we not just note that at the time of the consent agenda versus moving it onto the regular agenda?
I wouldn't with minutes because minutes should be adopted. And so, and it did need to be changed.
Yeah.
So they should be amended and adopted.
Okay.
So I think you handled the process.
Okay.
Perfectly.
It was just a question because, you know, like if it's just a simple admin error, then, and it's different now that we're doing the, and they're on the consent agenda versus, before, okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
And the other,
Yeah, just to that point, wouldn't, I mean, an email would probably suffice, but we'd have to republish the agenda, would we not? Like if Hazel had just emailed and said, hey, I saw this, could you change it, rather than having pulled the whole thing, is there, what would be, could that also solve the problem?
yes, right. If someone were to call me ahead of time and tell me that that there's a mistake that can be easily corrected like that, then yes, I would probably just address it at that moment and say, we have made a change to the minutes.
Okay.
Here's what the change is. You can take them off if you wish. But they're already corrected.
Right. Yeah, and just adopt the agenda as
Then
presented.
you can leave it as.
Okay,
Yeah, then you're not having to move it around.
yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Good point. Okay, Counselor Holiday.
Yeah, just 7.4. I like it because the whole point is to streamline things, but at the same time, I don't like, because there's sometimes that we just want more information, but we're not actually debating something. Or don't know if something more needs to be done. Like last time it was, I wanted to know something more about the council calendar or something that Minik had put in her report. That I wanted more information, but we weren't really debating it. But it might turn into a future decision later on that I might want to know as a counselor. I don't know. There's this just makes it sound like it has to be really big deal, significant versus there are just some. Yeah, I don't know. I just want to throw it out there for discussion.
Yeah, so we use that wording so that it is clear that the purpose of this is to remove unnecessary conversation, but if you feel it's necessary, you just ask to pull it off and it goes up there. I'm not gonna tell you.
'Cause you'll
it's
find
not
it.
Yeah,
significant.
I'm comfortable. To me, it's significant, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But
That's
I would just worry about a new counselor that's like, that worries about that kind of thing, but.
Think about how fast our meetings will be.
Yeah, I will
Just
make
kidding.
note of that in orientation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't let the chair hustle you if you have something, pull it off.
Yeah, fair statement, but yeah, I mean, it is not gonna tell you it's not significant enough to pull it. If you want it, you ask for it, it comes off.
Yeah, okay, and if that, like, I get that here, but yeah, just for the future, counselor might be.
I will make note of that one.
It's a good point.
I like it.
Thanks.
Okay. We'll carry on then. So under your public engagement section, we did a little bit of research. Actually, Iris did it for me, bless her little heart. So we looked at 14 different municipalities and 8 of them did not offer question period. In the chart that's attached here, I sorted them for you so you can see that a lot of them are cities, but not all of them. So there are a number of smaller municipalities that have done away with question period. And I'm seeing more and more of them go away. I don't have a strong recommendation one way or the other if you want to keep it or not. The only thing that I would like to ask of council for question period is to alter the restriction on when you can submit a question. So the 10 minutes in front of the meeting for admin can be a little challenging. But also sometimes the doors actually close, so people can't submit a question.
Mm,
And then
good point.
if we open the meeting at 2 minutes to 6 or even 2 minutes after 6 and they're still coming and wanting to have questions, it's robbing them of their right at that point. So I would really rather have that pushed out to even noon or something on that day. It gives us a little time to process it. They're gonna come in by email that way. Alternatively, would be to have no restrictions and just have questions come in. And making it really super clear to council that maybe you don't actually answer those questions at that meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe they get pushed off or you request something else. You don't have the means to easily answer the question at that meeting. You don't have to, it's not question and answer period, it's question period.
I think the
So,
one danger with that, from what I've seen with residents, if we don't give them an answer.
Yeah.
They think we're kind of hiding something. So I would prefer the deadline at noon. That's my preference.
Mayor Crane?
Yeah, I think it's, question period is one of those things for me that I believe is the right of every citizen and residents to come and put us to the fire if they want to. And they deserve an answer, if it's within our reach. And if not, it's up to us as elected officials to apologize for not having that answer, and we can get it to you in a timely fashion and explain the process. But that is the one thing that I think residents have to have access to us as elected officials in the realm in which decisions are made. From a transparency perspective, that to me is, it's the checkbox that you have to have. And if other communities don't have it, that's on them. But I think this is something that you have to have.
Councillor Thompson?
I agree. I think that question period is important. However, just a suggestion for no later than 12 noon on the day of the meeting. But if it is received, that the person that's submitting the question be notified that it will be put on the following agenda.
Why would you do that?
just
Well, it's
acknowledge the
received
receipt
after.
of it.
So at least then, like, if they don't get it in by noon, at least then they know that, sorry, you missed the deadline.
Yeah.
It will go on to the next agenda
100%
for response.
service level.
Councillor Kelly?
Agreed with both Councillor Gordon and Thompson. And I think maybe one small piece that we could add to even the mayor's component of this is addressing that at the beginning of every question period. Just saying, we expect the questions to be in at 12 o'clock if they're not, and like every question period,
Yeah.
right? Every meeting, then it's repetitive.
Yeah, we would.
You're doing
change
it.
Yeah.
So as I say, it's a 15-minute section of time per council.
You say questions are expected at 12 o'clock, the day of the meeting. If your question is not delivered by then, it will be put on the next agenda.
Yeah.
And you just say that every single time.
Make it predictable.
And then they understand. Then they don't come and sit and they say, why don't you have any answers for me?
Yeah.
Well, you got your question at 2:30, which is a couple hours ago.
Another thing to this, I agree with that totally. That another thing to this is, even though we get it is, Verna is right. It's not question and answer period.
Yeah.
You put your question forward. If you don't have the answer, you shouldn't be answering that question because you don't have the facts.
Yeah.
And that's where things go sideways sometimes is that. So to be able to say, if we don't have the answer for you, we'll get it.
Mayor Crane?
Yeah, to follow up on Councillor Kelly's, let's have a revamp written, just like our reconciliation at the start of the meeting. Let's have a question period paragraph, plain and simple. Yep, let's update it, right? Let's retweak it and bring in a new.
Crystal clear, transparent.
Love it.
Councillor Holiday?
I have wondered, I was trying to pull it up, so we have, and I know we're changing the whole customer service thing, but we have online like a thing for bylaw and a thing for complaints. For, like, it's an online form versus our process is now that there is the form, but you print it out, like, we don't have an online form for question period. Just wondering
Yeah.
if that would,
That's great advice. Fill out a PDF and
Submit.
council. Oh,
yeah. No, yeah, I just looked at,
It's easy.
so it,
And then you're for whatever.
you have the form and then your email saying, here's the form, the email, but it would just be easier if it was just a click here. And fill it out,
And then when it's submitted, it just gets sent
yeah,
right to like services or
cause I know, it-
wherever the front is.
Great idea. It's easy.
yeah, somebody like my mother, that whole step would just.
Well, you gotta print, then you gotta scan the email, then you gotta email yourself. Like there's a lot more steps there.
I mean, options, right? They
Yeah.
email it to us, that form's online, have that blurb and, you know, questions can be received by.
Yeah, it says in here, the file, yeah. Up to 10 minutes before.
But I meant like in the different types of media where questions can be received.
Suggestions.
Yeah.
Like the 12 noon.
12 noon for sure. I
Yeah.
think that's hard. I think that's necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it. Okay, recommendation going forward.
And the delegation. I think the only thing that we're looking for in here, they're done differently yet quite similarly everywhere it looks. There's not, mostly not a lot of drama with the delegations. The only thing I think that we would like to see within that bylaw is a process to deny a delegation, because really we don't have one.
Totally agree.
And there could be times, so for, if someone wants to come over a legal matter, and that conversation should not be happening at this table. Some of our policies have added statements in there to make it really clear to people using that service that administration has been given final say. So do they come here? If they're coming here looking solely for a donation, you have a policy that says you don't make donations. Do you want them coming here? So it would be wise to incorporate something in there, giving the CAO the authority to say, thank you for your request.
No.
Right, you use a good illustration of the distribution
There seems to be.
conversation with that, right? So
Yes.
Quickly asked.
you need that mechanism.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Holmes?
My only thoughts is whether, I guess we have a good relationship with the admin, but just in case you ever have someone saying, well, I got denied a delegation by admin. So it would be nice if there was a feedback loop, so that if you guys do deny, that we're notified, because otherwise we might hear it on the streets and be out of the loop. So
Email.
I would be happy to give you that, but it has to be automatically sent to us that so-and-so came and they were denied for this
Another
reason.
one.
If that's included in the policy, you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Great idea. I think we could just build it into the actual policy, but I think the simple one would be where, you're seeing last week we had that closed discussion and then tried to continue on. So I kind of looped council in, so everyone's on the same page, right? So it'd be similar where if delegation comes and it's, thank you, delegation X is denied because of policy Y. And then I think I'll just kick it over to council, or it could be in the weekly update email,
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you kind of expect at times with the delegation that they are providing you with all your material that they want to have discussed?
I'm trying really hard and it's most of the times it works. There have been times when I'm getting material really late.
Would you also put a time limit on that, to think it has to be here by 12 meetings as well?
Yes, I would like to find that.
Yeah.
That should actually 12 noon, not the day of the
The
meeting.
Wednesday.
It should be the day the agenda is.
The agenda is published.
It is in there, but I would like to strengthen the statement a little bit.
100%, make it tight.
Mayor Crane?
Yeah, I think, the delegation is planning on coming and they should be, prepared enough to drop every bit of hammer and information on the day agenda that's published prior to, and expect us to be ready to receive it. If they're not,
And make a decision.
if they're not coming in prepared like that, then you bump to the next one. On the, denial, again, I would say, people want to come and sit before council. To me, again, that's one of those pivotal, transparency issues. But if it's gonna get denied, I think in the agenda review, which is gonna happen anyway, That's when CAO has a chance to tell the deputy mayor and mayor, we had a delegation request XYZ. Here's how it all played out. We suggest this denied. And then at least the political end is updated right at the point of an agenda adoption. And then we can say, yeah, no.
Plus,
Yeah, but then it can be looped back to you guys, after that saying, here's what was denied, right? So it would still be to council delivered, but we would get at least forthright knowledge of, okay, they did come, here was the ask, boom, and then if you guys say, what's the deal on that, we can fill you in, right?
That's the goal.
Would it be beneficial to define in the policy the purpose of a delegation?
It is defined, is it not?
Be defined.
I don't know that it's clear. I would question the clarity of its definition because it says any person, yada, 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 shall come before council.
I don't,
But
the defined
Well-
scope is large.
that's where we, what is the scope?
Yeah.
Like, is it anybody and everybody?
For one example, it was the town of Tabor. One of the ones we reviewed anyway. You don't get to come and present information. You can
Yeah.
submit that in writing. You have to have a request.
That's my
And
point.
your
That's
request has to be very clearly put in your package.
I like that idea.
So,
So that's what I'm getting at.
So then do they ever come to the table?
if they have a request.
It's like when Ian came with the frisbee golf, he had two very clear requests.
Yeah.
And it made it easy. Our job was easy.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we've had delegations come before, we're like, and exactly what are you asking?
And they keep talking and talking and talking.
Exactly.
Because they're too nervous to say it, and then we're like 30 minutes later.
Yeah, like the hospice had a general,
Hoping we would make a
Hoping-
decision.
do you do money or capita? You know, wasn't fixed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right.
So that's what I mean,
Clear-
that's scope. If we can,
Clear request.
Yeah.
First and fourth, right?
what is your request? Have that identified.
So there has to be an ask.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're submitting correspondence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that would be the first line on the
It should be.
package.
Yeah.
It should,
Request.
it
And
should
then
be.
the package.
When you guys sit down and talk, like, wasn't it the mayor and the admin or
Mhm.
CEO were looking at the delegation prior? That's, you guys gotta be.
Yeah.
First and foremost. This is what we want of council and.
Yeah.
Here's why.
Exactly.
I like that.
And you, you made. Sure.
I think that was all that I was looking for out of that. Is there anything else in bylaw that council would like us to take a quick look at? Have addressed, you know?
Is there something on IT in terms of reference we needed to change or something recently
Choose reference.
within the procedure bylaw? That's a different bylaw, eh?
Committee man.
That's a committee bylaw.
I think Brendan.
Just more for information, how's the prior to amalgamation, our CAOs dealt with a lot of incoming questions and then they kind of delegate those questions out. I know that you've taken a pretty hard stance on putting it in the right department. How has that looked kind of in the last year? Have we been seeing a huge flow of questions? How have they been delegated? And do you mind just touching briefly on that?
Absolutely, Chair. Great question. We're actually, next council meeting, we're gonna have an update on our customer response management system,
That's
to including call volume. So I can tell you the town, relatively speaking, has 4 times the call volume that Prince George had, which is probably why our costs are so high, actually. So what, yeah, so this is kind of the.
that's why I asked.
I'm changing the culture.
I knew that we were gonna
Yeah.
do something like this.
Yeah, so I'll just sort of give a bit of an overview, because there's, again, this is coming with a public code of conduct policy and an overview of the CRM, customer response management. So, yeah, we get a lot of, it's very, like, we're too big to be a small town, but we're too small to be a really big town, right? So some folks still, maybe there's that cultural expectation that you just come in, you talk to the CAO as if, I don't have 12 hours of meetings or something like that. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that with the CRM that the questions or when it's cataloged, so we can address it, so it doesn't disappear and that it's addressed properly, so it goes to, you know, if it's a planning question, it goes to planning, if it's civic ops, it goes to civic ops, but what we're trying to get at is that a lot of these questions are recurring. The front desk will just be able to take them, right? So we're building FAQs. And as they come in, staff are filling them out. So the idea is that when a customer calls or emails, you know, if it's a simple question, maybe we can answer it right on the spot. Or some of the more difficult ones, they can be cataloged. And what we're seeing too is if maybe some customers don't like the answer they get, so they go to 12 other people, and then you add it up, and before you think of it, you think, okay, can we monetize that? And it's like, wow, that was $5,000 worth of in-kind costs, right? So, yeah, a couple of weeks, we'll have some more info on that. But I think we'll start seeing some big shifts, and I think I hope the majority or even the vast majority of residents appreciate it, because this is the exact same approach you get in any other city. They call it 311, right? And that's basically what we're doing here.
Yeah, I did notice one of your emails. A little bit of back and forth, and then it was like, hey, should you need further support?
Here's the pros.
Here's,
Here's the point.
and here's the dollar amount.
Yeah, and so that's kind of
Putting the onus on the resident.
yeah, and that's so step one. So step two, like eventually we may propose back to council like a fee structure, right? So why do you pay a fee for planning? Well, because you're paying for the expertise and time that goes into that, right? But we often forget that, you know, if a fairly complex query or just a repetitive one costs $1,000 in staff time, I mean, we should be compensated that, so the rest of the tax base isn't covering that. And so I think the idea is, you know, we kind of the first one, yeah, we're absolutely wanting to answer it quick, but when you see that pattern where it's, you know, ask 10 ways and it's the answer that some folks don't like.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we have FOIP requests, pay the fee. And we'll provide the info, and that's common. Yeah.
Thanks, so.
I did have one more section here to actually go over with you, and that is the public hearing section.
Yeah.
If council wants some changes made to the proposals, that's perfect. We can go over those. I do have one more statement I would like to add in, and I didn't put it in here.
Is it, if anyone here has not spoken yet, you have the chance to do it. Just add another. I think we could use another one, to be honest with you.
So what I am
How do you
missing
really feel?
that is required by the MGA is a statement for what needs to be included in the minutes.
Wow.
So you look at some places, public hearings are verbatim, so they go back over the recordings and they literally do verbatim. I don't see the point in that, we have recordings.
Yeah.
But there's gotta be something between that and we opened the hearing and we closed the hearing and 6 people said something.
I got an idea. We're recording them on Teams, right?
Right now, yes.
And Teams Premium includes a summary or synopsis of the meeting. It's a really cool feature.
AI?
Is that
It's AI generated. It takes the transcript and it takes the verbal and it spits out a really great synopsis. And it really condenses it, and it actually is a phenomenal piece.
So.
Have you seen it?
I haven't.
No.
I haven't looked at new software because when we do the move, we could end up using something entirely different, so I'm trying not to get attached to something. I'm getting.
No, fair. But it's great, even within administration, if you're using Teams for your meetings and you record the meeting, as soon as you hit record, it records a transcript, obviously, records a video, and if you've got that upgrade, it provides a great synopsis of the meeting.
Take a look at that. What I was kind of hoping for, if council's agreeable and you take a look at the next set of minutes to come out at next week's meeting, you'll see this is the tack we've taken here for the last set of public hearings, is just to say who spoke and whether or not they were in opposition. If you want the details, the video is there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were either opposed or in favor. Alternatively, we could bullet point the topics they mentioned, kind of like we do for question period. You had 3 questions about water, sewer, and garbage. Or or we could go more fulsome. When you start to go into fulsome detail, and it's my hesitancy with a synopsis, is if you interpreted and therefore created a mis-synopsis of what the person actually was saying, they will come back.
Well, I'm trying to improve is that you're not supposed to have that in minutes, right? And so why are we doing that for public hearings?
Just,
So I like simplifying it down to who's in favor, who's opposed, that kind of thing. I'm totally with you there. Because what you hear versus what I hear can be two different things, and that's why you don't put that into
Or
minutes.
when you read it,
Yeah,
if
exactly.
it's a
So,
transcript, it may come across.
like simplify it to the point that it's still legal, but simplify it to almost like minute type.
Okay. This was just a quick bullet point of.
Yeah, it's not times important too.
And what
Yeah.
is,
We don't want to
how
spend too
many in
much time.
favor and how many opposed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for that. I will add that statement into this section. Is there anything else that you would like to have altered in there or added or deleted?
I've always wondered about the address thing, because we like black them out
yeah,
in the printed package, but then they come up here and they say it and the video recorded. I've never quite understood like that aspect.
So if you're asking for their legal address. Whether they're. Yeah,
But sometimes it's really helpful for me to know, okay, this is literally the neighbor next door or across the street versus somebody 3 blocks away. So it's nice to have it, but then I do wonder about it being video recorded when we're blocking them out otherwise.
We can't help what people say in an open meeting.
It's open, right?
yeah.
It doesn't matter which way it
have-
happens, it's recorded.
It says that your person's addressing council should state their name and address. So if we're asking for it,
But is that to determine if they're a resident or a non-resident?
It would be. Just for-
yeah.
Yeah.
so it's. Well, I guess this is one of those things. Leave it.
You don't, no.
Because I want the address, like, do we not usually just take their house number out of the written documents?
Yeah, we black.
Yeah, so
Cause I'd like to know on somebody's written documents where they live, cause it is relevant a lot of times.
Yeah, so if I may, we redact the house number, emails, phone numbers, signatures, and of course with FOIP. Any personally identifiable information must be redacted, hence the house number being redacted. We ask for them to provide the address when they come to speak, because there is a certain component in a public hearing where you have to be able to determine how this person is affected by the bylaw.
Mhm.
So we could ask for their name, indicate they're speaking on their own behalf or somebody else's, and it must be in writing now, which I'm hugely in favor of. You may not be. And we could also, instead of your address, how are you affected or potentially affected by the bylaw? And then they could say, you know, I'm the neighbor or I live across the street. It's still not potentially personally identifiable because which neighbor, where across the
Yeah.
street.
Are you affected?
But then it gives you that how are you affected piece. It's just an idea. But like Verna said, if somebody comes up and says, I live at 123 Main Street, like they're giving that information freely. They could come up and say, I'm not telling you where I live. And it was, and that point, Barry, you'd probably be like, okay.
So, but we're asking them to give us their name and address. If they freely give us their address, then,
That's their prerogative.
yeah.
So
So I don't know if, for FOIP reasons, if we take that out, name,
So
Yeah.
within insurance, we have our frontline teams. Before they can put any information in our system, they have to have a privacy consent form filled out. So would that be of value
But if they.
in a
come to
public
the
session?
table-
No, in the public session. Where their name is, where they're broadcast, because I believe we should ask their address. Because it's relevant. would there be an expectation then, they have a privacy consent form that their name and address will be shared and and stored within a recording? Because it's the same thing happens when you call your bank. They have to give you the heads up that this video is being recorded for. So I'm kind of surprised we're not doing that.
It is something we could add into the mayor's script. Don't throw anything out.
You give your consent to have your private information recorded and broadcast.
But usually they come to the table.
I got a better one.
Mayor Crane.
Also something that we advertise.
When they sit at that chair, the wording can be, do you swear that you are a resident of Diamond Valley? Simple.
You know,
So binding there.
you
And
know,
I think then that the piece
Then
about
declare-
how are you
When
affected?
you declare that you are a resident of Diamond Valley for the interest of this public hearing.
And then I
Want to
think,
give your address, please do. If not,
Yeah.
can you declare that you are a resident in good standing within, or a taxpayer? You could say taxpayer. Do you pay taxes within the town?
Yeah, but you can be a resident.
Yep, so if you're a resident, you just declare that, yes, indeed, I am a resident and this does affect me.
and then the how are you affected? I think that's really important. How are you
That's a,
affected?
that's a
that's
yes.
a question, right? You could start, are you speaking in opposition? Yes, because we've had some people that I wondered, like, 2/3 into their speech, oh, you're opposed.
Councilor Holding.
My concern is knowing, having the redacted information, I don't like, because in a recent hearing we had, it was the people that were in favor of it were in favor of something because they had a similar lot on a corner a couple blocks away. So it wasn't that they were in favor as a neighbor because they thought it was good for the community.
Right.
They were in favor because they had a similar situation that they felt they were gonna profit from it. That had I been able to see their address and look at as a counselor and say, oh, these people are coming in favor for a very different reason than if they were the next door neighbor and thought it was great for the area,
Yeah.
right? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But wouldn't that fall under how are you affected?
Yeah, that's why if we could get, but nobody's gonna admit that they're
I mean, that's not
looking to
That's not
profit from it.
our job.
Yeah.
That's not our job, Carrie.
So I think that there might be merit of having something in the opening to a council meeting that if you come forward at question period or during a public hearing, we are it's recorded
Yeah.
and broadcast.
The county does that at the beginning of all their meetings.
Yeah.
And it's implied consent that if you come to the table that
That could be added
That's
to
implied
the,
consent, yes, it
Well,
is.
even just sitting there, I don't know how the camera angle is anymore, but I know before we caught some things on camera.
I think it's more than implied consent, it's consent. The minute they get involved in a public meeting, but
We can put some advertising out there
makes it
and
very
on our
clear.
website and whatnot,
Oh,
but
there.
we can put it in the script.
So then is this someone more consent on the meeting?
a big sign underneath the kink, you are on camera.
candid.
Like for question
We can
period
approve.
delegations and public hearings.
We can.
Something at the first of the agenda on the script.
Yeah, we can approve that. We can put a notice right on the agenda. We can approve how we can do these. And yeah, I think in the advertising for public hearings, that would be a good line to put it into, so we can.
But in terms of stopping redacting the house number, that would be in opposition of
Boy. You know,
WAPE and of legal advice given in various
Yeah.
seminars that I've attended.
Right, is it being redacted for the public or like council's not allowed to know it?
Been redacted, period, from
Yeah,
everybody.
so it's a public document in an agenda, but subject to FOIA.
Right, but could we as council ask that question in closed or prior to in an email and find out? Like, if I'm wondering why this person has submitted a submission, can I ask as a counselor, where does this person live in proximity to the property? Am I allowed to know that?
I guess my question would be, from a foundational planning principles perspective, should it matter if they're the immediate next door neighbor or 5 houses away? Is good planning just good planning? And it's bad planning and bad development, just bad planning and development.
I, obviously, the previous one, I didn't agree with it, so I thought it was bad planning. So, no, yeah, I don't know.
But to me, that would be the broader question is, if you are in the neighborhood, you may be affected in some way. If you are in the neighborhood, that is going to show on your street address. And do you have any more or less skin in the game than the one guy next to you or the one right across from you?
Exactly.
And you may agree, you may disagree. But I look at it more broadly and contextually, because that's council's role in, let's say, a land use designation. Right, is what is the strategy, and this is why typically we don't do spot zoning, because it's terrible planning practice. It's terrible planning practice. Because you're picking individual winners and losers. But at this point with our bylaws, they don't have another option. So my overall recommendation would be keep it at the street and amend your R1 district.
That's the public hearing session.
What did you get there? We wanted something,
So I'm gonna look at the various forms of communicating overall, that you're, in a public meeting here,
Yeah.
being recorded. The minutes will just be very almost bulleted. Just right down to bare bones of information. I'll take a look at section F2, to ask them to show how they're affecting.
Yeah.
Just so that council's clear, we can ask them, if they don't put it in their submission. If they're at the table, you can ask them, but if they don't put it in a written submission, we can't get it back.
yeah,
And we can certainly make a clear statement in the public hearing ads that your information is going to be public. For sure. Okay, if that's it, that is all that I was looking for out of the procedure bylaw. Council had nothing else on that one?
Nope.
Okay.
We can move on to the election sign.
Now,
this is always a fun one.
Where you want.
Nothing like repeat business. So I was talking with, Matt Hogan, from Fortman, and we wanted to propose bringing back a former Black Diamond bylaw, possibly with some amendments, but to obviously include the entire town. To provide some limitations on where election signs can go, when they can be put up, and sizing, that sort of thing. Right now, so this came out of another JFAC meeting, pre-amalgamation, we tried to make them the same and couldn't, so we still have 2 different rules. They're both in land use bylaws. They're similar, but they are not the same. There's different size limitations. And one side has a fine, the other one does not. So at the very least, I would like to clear that up, but as a returning officer, I would prefer to have its own separate bylaw. In all honesty, it's easier to indicate to people where they can put signs. It cuts way back on the clutter. It makes the signs way more visible in their spaces.
And you don't have to do it every election.
Yes, that too. It allows for better enforcement when the rules are not followed. It's really hard to create enforcement of the land use bylaw. it makes it really clear. It's something you can, chuck out to a candidate with their handbooks and they can very clearly see where they can put signs and how big they can be. It also stands for provincial and federal elections as well. So it allows everybody who's running any kind of a campaign at any time to know what they can and can't be.
Makes sense.
I am totally okay with you going forward with an election sign bylaw.
Mayor Crane?
Can you just make it one, call it Diamond Valleys, and never speak of these two again?
I'd love to, but you're gonna have to have a public hearing.
Well, I mean, exactly, at least we only have to have one. No, let's get it streamlined and be done. Like, it's low hanging fruit that shouldn't be, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of was intrigued by the idea that Canmore only allows it on private property.
They've just recently made that restriction. There are a number of municipalities who have really shrunk it.
Yeah, because I kind of like it, because if you don't know at least 10 people around town to put a sign out, you shouldn't be running for council. Or you shouldn't get elected, is my opinion, so that.
Canvassing so you can.
Such a mess in so many places.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just so cluttered. You don't even freaking look
Well,
at it.
because the last time we had somebody that, how many signs was that, like 300?
Oh, yeah, that was, the old CAO from Londy's.
Yeah, so I kind of like the idea of private property only and not get into our, anyhow. Election signs or.
Really minimal.
Isn't that easier?
I'm good with going with private
Is
property
that,
only.
yeah, is it only Canmore, or did you, like, how many, like, how weird is this of an idea?
Cameron's the only one I've seen so far, but it's early in the season. We may see more when somebody takes the charge, other people will say, I love it, and they come up with it, so. I can take another look around it.
Or
I think it's
limit-
more meaningful. It's,
Limit the number of signs
and
Yeah, this limits the number of signs already.
in areas, but doesn't mean like a candidate can only put up 10 signs.
Well, technically it limits the sign, the number too, because you got 50 meters apart.
Yeah.
So if it's a small area, you get only one,
Plus private property.
yeah,
So on
You know-
one, you can have the purple zones, it's really bad.
right.
I
Um,
like that.
you can have one in each zone, they can be double sided, so you can see both sides, whatever you as a candidate want to put out. But you have these public areas plus 17 of your best friends on the front lines.
Is it one in each zone there or within like one zone, if they gotta be 50 meter space?
It would end up being one in the end because I had a problem with F at the 2021 election. They didn't get a chance to fix it because this was taken away for 2022. And the zone A will have to be shortened.
Oh, so you'd redo the map.
Yes.
I think the only concern I have, if we do it back down to private property only, which I fully support, but I think the caution would that be in an election year, we're gonna do that. And the tendency with that is,
It's harder for other people to get their name out.
yeah, incumbents would have an advantage that I don't know. I wouldn't want that, to be honest. That's my concern. I mean, I know we're in an anomaly this season where incumbents are likely to fail based on what data is out there right now, but I don't think that would be, that's why I wouldn't support just private property right now.
Mayor Crane?
Yeah, private property is one thing, you can always do that, but I think, again, this needs to be access for all. You have to have that limit of space where everyone can go. And if I'm thinking of changing my vote as a voter, I wanna see those names. Bang, 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 as I'm driving home. And then I can quickly go on Facebook and find those people and have a look at their portfolio, right? So for me, I would like to keep this. Is the Turner Valley one totally fine? Is that why we don't have that map here?
We don't have this.
You just want to tweak the Black Diamond.
You just do.
No, it's gotta be the Valley one.
Yeah,
Yes,
we do whatever. we want.
I'll base it on Black Diamond one in terms of
Yeah.
what's allowed and what isn't allowed.
And then we'd rescind the bylaws and.
One other thing I would point out, and I only say this because I thought it was kind of funny. Councillor Holiday's husband was out putting up her giant sign. And he used some nice
Rebar.
2 foot strings of rebar, slammed those puppies down, that sign's going nowhere. Well, he only missed the town electrical box by about 1.5 inches.
We're supposed to say that.
So we need to have
Yeah.
a small awareness of when we have
Underground service.
certain things of that nature, underground services. That we say, okay, so on that corner, we should probably have a one call.
Yeah.
Leading up to the election, so that people know, because if you're wanting to sign the stick, you really gotta hammer it in, and those services were low, and it was right next to the box.
Counselor Gordon?
I do have a suggestion, for instance, using the Black Diamond map here, zone A and zone F, because you have it on either side of the road. Would it be wise to have an allowance for one on both sides of the road? I know, because not many people have double sided, right? So I used to just take 2 signs and screw them together, that's what I did, right?
Yeah.
But it just, because if somebody's looking up too far that way, trying to get all the signs because they're on one side.
So
I think it'd be wise to have, like, both sides of the road in those zones.
So for example, in zone F, a chunk of the west side, a large chunk that will, if not all of it, will have to come off, because that is actually, running along the lodge.
Yeah.
And that October was beautiful, and they were still maintaining that property, and it's our road right of way, but they take
Yeah.
such lovely care of it, they were really unhappy.
So I
There's
guess
signs up there.
in whatever zone allows for signs on either side, I would recommend we allow signs on both sides, but only one.
Yeah, those are the only 2 at the moment, and like I said, I'm not sure what'll be left of F, and I think all of A will be gone. as
Because you
well.
wanted to turn it out
There's been
too, right,
developments.
in a similar way.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they're really, so just looking at Main Street, Highway 22, there really aren't a lot of spaces where you can
No.
touch on both sides of the street. Our highways are our streets, and sidewalks and things, so there's even a limitation of the ability to put on private property in those spaces. So I will look for those. If we can, we will certainly allow them. But if not, I would recommend considering some signs for there and putting them on.
Works for me.
It's a good solution.
Okay, give her.
What's next?
Mhm.
Karen?
Is Carrie? If Renee is finished.
I am the council is.
We are.
Any more questions, folks?
Nope. Let's keep going.
Carrie.
Not many yell at you from here.
I will
Come to the States, but you like for here.
It just happened.
Yes, if you read my.
Indeed.
Okay, so we're gonna start with
Let's-
compliance and enforcement. So much fun. What I'm finding is there have been some inconsistencies with how compliance and enforcement has been undertaken over the past few decades, not unusual for a small town. Changes in council, CAOs, staff, fairly normal. Not here ashamedly. Gonna move forward. What I'm looking for is sort of direction from council on what we want enforced and to what severity. And if we don't want certain things enforced, then I'm just gonna start drafting amendments to remove the things that we have no intention of enforcing. Why have a rule we're not going to make people follow it? Cool, happy we're on the same page with that.
Mhm.
So, jumping right in, there are a few different things that we see constantly with non-compliance on unauthorized land development. So literally, you just built something and you didn't have a permit where you needed a permit. Non-conforming uses or structures, so you got the permit for the garage, but then you just made it bigger. Failure to adhere to development permit conditions. you were required to plant trees and grass and then you didn't. Encroachments on town or private property. You built a big old pergola over top of your drainage roadway. Land use violence. Sorry, these are just like ones that are like.
Yeah.
People don't really understand the impact of them until we're like looking at a CSC, a security, sorry, a certificate of compliance, a security return, a new development permit application, a business license application. We're like, whoa, what you got going on there? Land use violations, so they may be using it for one type of use that isn't actually allowed in that district. So I've seen in a previous municipality, a house that was converted to a storefront. Nobody was living there, just a storefront, which was not allowed on their R1 lot as a listed use. Site alterations and environmental concerns. So this goes to grading, excavations, changes to natural drainage patterns that may impact their property, their neighbor's property, or municipal infrastructure. Failure to adhere to construction standards. This is more so on the safety code side, and they have the jurisdiction to deal with that. Or if it's commercial, it may be on the fire side. There are some instances where construction standards are more on the town side, which is under our development agreements. And then Craig and our engineers often get to deal with the headaches of that for decades to come. So again, some challenges: historical uses of land, some fairness, policies, inconsistencies, public perception, and obviously resource constraints. Approaches. We typically, when we find these things, let the person know, hey, this is a problem because. We'll often get a lot of pushback of, and I'm going to paraphrase here, well, that's a stupid rule. Yep, okay. Presumably it's there for a reason. I like when I can tell them what that reason is, but I wasn't here when all the rules were created. So sometimes I don't know why. Priority-based enforcement. So that's kind of where we're at right now because we don't have a lot of the resources. So when there's something that comes to our attention that has a higher impact on public safety, those are quite high up. Incompatible land uses, those are pretty high up, or potential to impact municipal services, including drainage. And then amendments to land use bylaw, which I said, if we're not gonna ever enforce something, let's just remove it. We try to, when we're giving these warnings and letters, define a timeline. Again, with staff turnover or capacity constraints or promises that are made and not followed through on, and made and then not followed through on. Some of these files can linger weeks, months, years, decades. I think we're dealing with one right now that has enforcement files back to like the early 2000s. Just keeps being a repeat offender that I guess they hope that we forget that they had problems on that site. And then a proactive versus a reactive approach, and this is largely political. So I'm gonna look to you guys where you want to take that. Often just because of resource constraints, when things come to our attention, we'll deal with them. We don't go looking for problems. We often tell people we don't go looking for problems, but maybe it's come to our attention because we're dealing with one site and they've identified something on the neighbor's site. We're like, oh, well, that's a problem. So Brenda kind of mentioned it briefly when she was talking about the election signs. In the planning world, we have a few enforcement mechanisms. Most of them are slow and clunky. So we have a stop order. I give you a warning with a deadline that you may or may not meet. And then depending on how lenient I am or not lenient, depending on the person sitting in the chair, the relationship, council, we might give them a little bit more time, or we might hit them with a stop order, which says that they have to halt or rectify the problem within a certain amount of time. Here's what you're in breach of, here's how to fix it. If they don't do those things, then we get a lawyer and we take them to court to give them a court order to do the thing. And then hopefully they don't violate the court order. Because kind of at that point, it's out of our jurisdiction. We can also do fines, get warnings, or just non-action. So we're just like, well, that thing's been there for 30 years, it hasn't seemed to be a problem, I guess we'll just keep ignoring it. So I don't have options necessarily, but I do need to start drafting more bylaws, plans, and policies. It's part of my work plan for the next year to really get on that, because this whole having to of everything is exhausting. So with that in mind, moving forward with the one focus, if you have strong opinions or preferences about leniency or punitiveness or specific areas that we should focus on or not focus on. There was a great conversation about the vacant land subclass and kind of the target with that. So I thought that that was great. I'm like, oh, I want to do that with enforcement. And I know it's complex. It's a wicked problem. It's very intertwined, and it's then going to lead into my second topic about encouragements and stuff.
Harry, what do you find that usually works? Do you find that doing more education and then leading to, if it's not completed, then you are non-compliant and a fine, or?
In my experience, the people who are completely oblivious typically get their backs up when it's brought to their attention. It's like, oh, well, I didn't know. You can't hold me accountable because I didn't know. I bought this. It's been here for 30 years. Okay, yes, but you bought a property with a problem on it. So whether they didn't do a certificate of compliance, whether they ignored the notes on their certificate of compliance, I don't know. But the bylaw may have changed, creating a non-conforming situation. So that's on us. That has been my lived experience, is getting compliance is challenging. Whether it's a small thing, a big thing, a naive thing, or an intentional thing. It is very time consuming.
Especially for sale.
It's always time consuming.
How's that all?
When it comes to, and I've been through, buying and selling houses and stuff. As far as I can tell, that's the purchaser's responsibility, whether or not they read the contract. But when it comes to some sort of grandfather clause, so if we change the bylaw and then that affects them, do we not look at that as, well, it was here before we changed the bylaw? We're not gonna go after them for that unless it's a health and safety or, overnight flooding concern, something like that, or is that something that you would still investigate?
So I just have to say my piece, I'm sorry. Grandfathering is not a legal principle in planning law in Alberta. So when we changed the bylaw, it's something that was granted permission in the past or didn't, or was exempt from requiring a permit in the past. If it met the rules or met the permit of the day, it is legal. Then we change the rules and becomes non-conforming.
But it's legal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if they then go to do something, a non-conforming property cannot be added on to, changed in any significant way. The use cannot be spread. There's a whole big section of the MGA, unless it's to make it a conforming building. So if you have a garage that you built back in 70s, and you built that stuff real good. So it's structurally sound, and you're like, you know what? I want to add on to that garage. I want to add another bay or maybe a pottery studio. Come to us and say, I'm gonna put this addition. I go, can't, you're too close to the side yard. That would be an example of one of those situations. Often when we find infractions, there aren't approvals or they are in violation of their approval. So they were approved for deck A. And in the course of constructing deck A, they just decided to, hit a little. And now it is not the deck that was approved. It's over a utility right of way. It's in a drainage easement. It's too close to their yard property line. Things of that nature.
Would you make them remove the bay?
So that's where I'm coming to you, because there's been a lot of inconsistency and because some of this goes back to, we really just need you to back us at the end of the day. If we start saying, no, this is the expectation of council, council has set bylaws and policies, and this is the expectation that we administer the will of council. What is going to happen is you are going to have probably a lineup of people wanting to come sit here and cry and we would need you to back us and say, well, no, they're administering the bylaws and policies that we've approved. So if there are things that you don't want us going after, let's amend it.
Councillor Kelly?
Yeah, so just to that point, I think that there's a pretty definitive line here for us. I am not an engineer, I'm not a planner. I would back you with what we decide here as council. I think I stand on the fence of like, you have to follow what was put in place when you started to build your house. Like that's where, or whatever, your deck or whatever you want. And by the sounds of it, time doesn't really play a factor in that. If you're not conforming and you need to accomplish certain things that you agreed to in the development phase, then you gotta do it. I know it's easily said, but I think if that's a direction the council is willing to give, I think that's what we have to do, is just give that direction and let Carrie and the team do the work. I know it's a lot of work because we talked about that months ago, or not that long, maybe not months ago, but.
Councillor Hogan?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have a zillion questions on this, but
That's why we're here.
there's no good answer on a lot of it. Because we have been such a mess in our planning department, especially in the valley side for so long. Right, and so a lot of stuff has happened that doesn't make a lot of sense to go after unless there's a safety or environmental concern. But moving forward, like new developments, if we're in a good shape in planning, but I don't know when you would catch it that they tweak their deck. Do you go back and look at everybody's decks after they build it? Like, how do you catch?
A lot of them often come to us through certificate of compliance requests.
Right, but that's like,
You
really,
issue them,
could be 10 years later, right?
like on scale, you mean,
Yeah.
as part of the RPR?
Well, no, if I build build the deck on my house and I live there for 30 years, you're not gonna catch that I built.
Yeah, that's my
something wrong
point.
with the deck for 30 years.
Yeah, so some of those we do catch at closeout of the build. So if it's a new build and we've approved one deck and the builder goes through a sale and the new owner who's moving into a brand new house goes, oh man, love this, but that deck, I mean, could you just make it a little bit more like this? The builder, good customer service, trying to improve their relations in the community, go, "Yeah, we can definitely do that for you." And then we go to give them their security back, and like, well, you built that deck too close to the side yard, and that exceeds our variance, and no.
Yeah, we dealt with that, yeah.
You kind of have to deal with only
Yeah.
new properties.
I think there's still one there.
moving
Oh, yeah.
I walk by it every day.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, it's still the same.
forward. You
Like
kind of,
4 years ago.
I don't think we can blanket say go after everything because there's so much historical.
But they're not going after something.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe if you don't mind, Chair, I just want to clarify, so we're like, we're not going after anything, right? These are just files that keep coming up and that's sort of how they, you know, like I'll just use the example that security matter came up. Give half of them back, and there's a bunch that are non-compliant. Well, we got a policy that says that will come into compliance, right? So it's sort of like, had it never came up, we never would have looked at it.
That's right.
yeah.
And we did speak about, or maybe this is the time to do it. We did talk about timelines or deadlines on these, on getting the securities back too, right, from the developers?
Yeah, so under the security policy that council passed in November,
Okay,
once we receive a written request, we have 45 days to get back to them on the condition of where that sits. So we would go conduct our site inspection, review our file, and be like, I went to conduct the site inspection. I couldn't verify that there was grass, or I couldn't verify a tree, or it looked like there was a building in the backyard, but it was obscured. So is it a garage? Is it a shed? Do we have some information on the size of it? Because it might be a permit.
right,
I don't have a file for the permit.
right, but further to that. When a builder finishes building, should they not have a deadline to apply for their deposit back? So that they can't wait 5 years and then say, oh, I need to get my security for 15 houses that I built in Riverwood 5 years ago, and now's the time to do it. And put all the applications in at the same time. Like, we should have a deadline when a house is complete that says the builder has a deadline to request the security deposit.
Otherwise it's forfeited after 5 years or whatever.
Correct, or even 2. Because this is, I think, what in large part, I mean, if I can speak to Woodmaster's concern, is like, a lot of these go way back. And I don't know how soon or how recent he applied for some of these securities, but the development's been built for 10 years. So if he's just like, oh, I'll just wait and I'll do it all at one time. You know, then you have a spectrum of,
The tree's dead by then.
or it's been owned by 2 people and they've removed it, they built a new deck without compliance, then it wouldn't fall on Woodmasters, but how do you chase that down at that point?
And so I think that that's part of, and I'll say this, because I say it to my team all the time, I think it's part of planning's great failure kind of worldwide, or at least North America, Canada, Alberta wide. I think it's poorly done across the board, the communication of how implementation planning affects landowners. I mean, you can raise your hands. How many of you have seen the development permit for your house?
No, the original.
I've seen the property report.
Yeah.
Right? So if you've never seen
You
the
would know.
development permit for your house, do you know what your permanent conditions are for your property?
Exactly.
Mine was 1930.
So- If you're in Riverwood, a permanent condition on your property is you must maintain 2 trees. If you cut them down, if you let them die, it's still your responsibility to maintain 2 trees on your property.
Yeah, so my backyard wasn't even finished when we bought, and there were no trees. I actually planted 2 trees, so I'm in compliance and therefore
And you should.
Masters owes me money. Yeah, and our backyard was unfinished, it was backfill. There was no grass, there was nothing when we bought our house, and it was a year old at that point.
So a couple of questions before I get to this
Interesting.
point here. Did we check with legal about the option to have a forfeiture clause on securities?
Yes, and I'm still working through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be great if we could. I mean, just that makes no sense, right? So looking at the potential approaches, because of where we're at. I hate red tape, but conditions are in place on purpose. So I would like, my recommendation for council, my suggestion is to have priority-based enforcement right now. Look at what is the priorities, whatever that might be, the high impact, like you said, targeting high impact violations. Focusing on that right now at the time. I'm a huge fan of defined compliance timelines. That if there's something that is found non-compliant, boom, a very strict timeline is set with repercussions, consequences if that timeline isn't met. And I'm a huge fan of being proactive. What that proactivity looks like, I'm not sure. we have a bylaw officer, maybe they can come alongside and support you. And once we have everything outlined and defined, if timelines aren't met, boom, this is where we're at. And a lot of our things could be handled through, correct me if I'm wrong, even if somebody's building a garage, they have to pull permits, right? So we outsource that to a company, well, then somehow we'll know whether or not when they're getting that final report in, is it compliance or not? So I would prefer a proactive approach, define timelines within that, but focusing right now on those things that are quote unquote high impact. But you have my support. I mean, most of us have sat at some time or other in MPC. Conditions, they're well aware of conditions at development permit stage, so they don't have a lot to stand on.
Yeah, and I cannot support when people don't read the conditions.
Yeah,
I
100%.
I didn't know that. I don't care.
No, ignorance is not bliss.
No,
I'm sorry, it doesn't work.
I don't care. I've been burned because I haven't read them properly, and I've been blessed in some respects that I have read them because I've known my background as well. So yeah, I think you're in a tough spot. I echo a lot of what Councilor Gordon said. I'll support you. I think some of these are just gonna be really complicated dealing with, like, I keep saying Woodmaster's probably because he has the most. But the scope of time. I don't know.
I don't know if I'm not 100% on the proactive enforcement, like. Case in point, we subdivided land, we donated 12 acres to the town, and the neighbor in the MD has 50 feet of his barn on part of that land, right? So are you gonna, and we had a planner previously in your spot who would go around and pick on fights with historical landowners, like walk around town and find things to complain about. So I
I don't
like
think that's proactive, that's been insane.
yeah.
I don't think Gary has that time.
No,
Thankfully,
No, I think, but
But-
that's what my caveat was, the proactive approach is, as information is realized through the permitting stage, wherever it might be,
Yeah,
boom, deal with it.
yeah, so I agree to be proactive on new development and new builds and things like that, but I don't believe in sending our bylaw officer to our old neighborhoods to start measuring their sheds, right? Like, that's my thoughts, so. Like it needs, but I do believe that if we have a new development and a new construction going on, then yeah, there needs to be a process.
But then what do you do in the older neighborhoods?
Yeah,
Leave them
People
alone.
can't just,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know, so I'm gonna slap a great big deck on my little tiny house. And cover it. And close it in.
That, to have somebody going around, yeah,
I would,
I guess.
so we don't go around, the question is, would I treat an as-built from a home builder on a new build differently than a CFC on a house where the owners lived there for 40 years and has passed away? And from my perspective, if you're not meeting the bylaws, policies and approvals in place for that property, you are non-compliant, whether you're brand new or 40 years old.
Right, but when you're coming for sale, that's when it would come up, but you're not gonna go after that.
I am not walking around the neighborhood trying to find problems.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to clarify, the proactive, that's,
Because at the
I
point,
don't wanna be that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would actually call when we are made aware of issues through any part of the development permit, that is reactive.
Yeah.
Because it's being brought
It is.
to us,
Yeah.
that is reactive.
That's it, shall we just call it, it's responsive. You bring it to us,
and we'll respond.
like we don't go out and look. Right, like I said, the securities issue just came up because it came. to
They
us.
brought it to you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, and then if I can, I'm gonna flip the script real quick, because then we have encroachments. Where we have encroachments into utility rights of ways, environmental reserve, municipal reserve.
Mhm.
People are utilizing town-owned land.
Yeah.
With no approvals for free. Sorry, you know where I sit on this instantly.
Like extending a fence, like right to the sidewalk.
Oh, people will extend their full backyards for like
Acres.
40 feet, and they have sheds and fire pits and trees,
In public land.
public, swing set, there we go, that's the word I'm going for, all on public land.
Oh, I didn't know I could use the air for that.
Well, we couldn't even put a bridge.
I gotta take my fence down and just go up the hill.
So this creates a problem, for the town sometimes,
Insurance.
in terms of liability,
Yeah.
in terms of maintenance.
Yeah.
Deer Park staff just love it.
Our public works,
Do you see a lot of this?
yes.
Wow.
A
okay.
lot, hence why it's a whole separate report.
Interesting, all right.
So bring it to council and we'll give you guys the tools you need to close her down.
Okay, so again, they come to us through our PRCOCs, as-built, security return request complaints.
Yeah.
Requests for information. And this is where we might actually want direction from council to be proactive, is if we're gonna treat this one guy that came in for a COC, and we're gonna tell him to remove all the crap from his backyard. I mean, it's often that they will tell us, well, go after him and him and him and him and him, and they, give us all the addresses for down the street.
Hmm.
But it might just be less effort if we just say, we know that this set of yards is a problem, and we're going to proactively work with them over the next summer to remove their stuff off of our land. Or we know that this drainage right of way is a problem. There are 16 houses that all have stuff in the drainage right of way. And this summer, those are the ones that we're gonna work with.
I built some in my Legion Valley house, I'm sorry to not throw shit off.
It's a pretty large.
Well, it goes to the, like you said, response. We, what was it, the wood carving place, they came and asked us for.
Yeah, that's down now.
Perfect
Right,
example.
but that they came and asked us to be kind of granted the opportunity to keep that structure there, but that was a utility right away. And we said no, and by the way, you have to take that down. I think this speaks exactly to that response. Is it, yeah, so, and this is the proactive, which I also like, yeah, it's gotta go.
So there's a few ways that we can actually approach enforcement on town-owned land specifically, because we have a lot of jurisdictions on our own land. We can do a consent letter, so that's a written acknowledgement that, hey, you have a planter box over the drainage culvert. We know it's there, you know it's there, but we're not gonna make you remove it right now. If we find out that there's a problem with drainage, then we'll come for
That's reactive.
it. So we could also do an encroachment agreement, which is a formal agreement that we register by Canadian on title with certain rights, responsibilities, and remedies. We can do a lease agreement that we acknowledge that somebody is using town-owned land or land that the town has interest in. We can do a subdivision and sale in some instances. People often freak out when I bring this to them because they now have to pay for land and then they're gonna pay taxes on it. Say, well, then get your stuff off our land.
So there's property where a garage was built and it encroaches on town-owned land. So what would be the best way to handle that in your opinion?
Please.
If
In the old neighborhood.
If there was a garage built on town-owned land,
Like a corner of the garage?
yeah, I would try and find what the permit approval was. It's going to have setbacks. If they didn't account for eaves, shame on them. That's a them problem.
I think it's the actual building
And
structure.
it's the actual building.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, they're in our road right away. Why do we have a structure in our road right away?
100%.
But I'm not a risk taker.
So the question is, do we drop the hammer or do we work with them? Because it's in the road right away and it is an issue we're aware of.
Mhm.
So.
And I don't want to speak for Craig, but I know that Craig is far more lenient than I in discussions with him. So Craig would be like, yeah, an encouragement agreement, right? Possibly?
Possibly.
But see, this goes back to the challenge. This goes back to the challenge that is the underlying part here. We can't grandfather in. We want to be working with rather than seen in opposition to. But at the same time, we have policies in place and bylaws in place for a purpose. And if a bylaw is not upheld, what's the point of the bylaw? So does it seem like we're being harsh? No, we have a bylaw on purpose. So I'd be the type, like I'm a black and white guy. So if that's what it states there, you've encroached, now we have an issue. And it's a you issue, not a me issue.
But that's there, it's a bunch of properties that have, because we had it at NPC, they're in the old part of Turner Valley. Way before anybody was surveying or caring about anything, they just plopped it down. So
But you can't grandfather in.
you can't.
So do we,
Legal non-conforming.
so because it happened 30 years ago, well, we're gonna be nice because it happened 30 years ago? See, that's the challenge, and that's what's in both of your reports.
To go after somebody.
Well, no, it's not going after this specific person,
It
because,
flopped on my desk and now what in the hell do I do with it?
yeah, this is not,
Yeah.
us going after them, it's, we need to rectify a situation, and now we've become aware of X. So we have a mechanism that deals with it. Do we want to use the mechanism, or do we want to just kind of pretend that the issue isn't existent?
So my intention is to go away and draft an encroachment policy. So in that encroachment policy, again, all of these things can be considered, whether we're leasing, selling, enforcing, entering into encroachment agreements, issuing consent letters. And they're going to consider, historical use of land. Was it built before we even had a land use bylaw? That's a whole different situation. Was it built 5 years ago and they just didn't care where the core of this was? Or, it might be a new build and the grades are super kitty wonker, and when they go to put something in, they're like, oh, well, we'll just shift it a little bit this way or a little bit that way, and then all of a sudden it's a utility right way. So again, I'm fairly risk averse, which is why I'm coming for a temperature check. The fair and equitable use of town-owned assets to me is huge. I represent the interests of the town first and foremost, municipal corporation of the town of Diamond Valley, which is protection of your assets and infrastructure and adherence to council's direction as put forth through bylaws and policies.
Councilor Gordon?
Yeah, I made a comment earlier about the high impact. Could you present to us what might, like, based on your current, like where you're at right now, what would you say this is high impact and this is what we need to take care of?
In terms
Like,
of,
it sounds like
yeah,
utility right of ways.
so in.
Sounds like drainage.
In terms of encroachment, I'll kind of categorize them into three. So we're dealing with three kind of major buckets. I would say the high impact ones in my perspective, just because the flagrant disregard for rules and decorum is the backyards that just keep extending and extending and extending. Or the side yards, it's like, oh, well, there's some town-owned land here and I'm just gonna,
Mhm.
and it seems to grow with time. And those really bother me because, no, that's municipal reserve, that's park space, that is intended as public good. And you now have doubled your private amenity space. You are not paying taxes on it. And you are potentially taking away from the public good. Those to me just make me outraged. We also have the structures over top of utility right of ways. And that includes drainage right of ways. Those bother me because, again, protection of town assets. We wouldn't have asked for those things in the subdivision and development if they didn't mean something. How often is somebody gonna actually have to move a building that's over a water line? I don't know, maybe never. But the fact that you were aware of it when you purchased your property, and if you weren't, shame on your realtor and your lawyer.
Yep.
It's there, it's registered on your title at land titles. We have
With your
we
signature.
had a touring system. So those really bother me because of that. And then, but I would call those kind of like medium Because I mean, they both can be there forever. Usually the deck over top of your utility right away only really impacts the town. If that, maybe there's another utility provider. And then the last one are encroachments that other municipalities, like the city of Calgary, deals with some encroachments into road right of ways through a consent letter. So they have a predefined process for gravel in boulevards. Boulevard is the road right of way. It's your responsibility to maintain under the private property, the personal
Property.
responsibility bylaw, that one. I'm butchering, but it is town-owned land in the road right of way. So they go, yep, you got gravel, that's fine, our engineer is happy, our civic ops, roads guys are happy. Here's a letter, you acknowledge it, we acknowledge it, let's move on. So those would be my three things that are kind of simmering that I can put most of my files in one of those files.
So gravel instead of grass in the boulevards?
Yes, so the Calgary construction standard for subdivision and development design requires the boulevard to be grass to seed, or seeded to grass or sodded.
And we follow that here.
And why do we actually care about that?
It is the standard, it is intended to improve ecosystem health and drainage.
Yeah.
So was that also like maybe written in the subdivision application?
There are several development permits that it was explicitly written into as a condition of approval.
That's true.
So I also have a zero-scaping policy, about 70% drafted for council's consideration that will not directly address the gravel situation,
Comes close.
but might send us in a good framework of discussion. But I'll bring that back another day for discussion.
So if they do get the consent letter, do they sometimes then get their securities returned?
So if it's something that the town is willing to accept in our right of way on our land, then yeah, we can return security.
That's lead it, I guess. Looks or drainage, like that little bit of extra grass is not gonna make the difference between global warming and not. So that's what I don't care about.
Well, I think that you're wrong, actually, because Las Vegas and Phoenix, greater Phoenix area went to zero scaping and gravel and everything, and their temperature has gone up 10 degrees.
And now they're
Right,
going
but
back.
Boulevard is such a, you look at the landmass of Turner Valley, Block Diamond as a whole area.
It was ugly.
Yeah,
And I think that the challenge there is often the treatment of the boulevard would be the treatment of the entire, at least front yard.
Yeah.
So if there's anything in particular that council wants addressed in the encroachment policy, any particular thing that you want addressed in a certain way, or if you want a specific type of stakeholder consultation.
For policies like that, that's a tough one.
I'd say if we're not required to have a public hearing on it, but maybe we do an extra one. Just in case we do hear something back, I don't know.
Policy, so.
We could put something on our website that solicits feedback in the form of a survey. There's sometimes risks with the burnout. We're always like,
Survey.
well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, because like, didn't we elect you people to, I've seen it kind of go both ways, but you will never win. You will either be over engaging or under engaging.
Well, it's up to the public too to engage. Which many don't. Or they engage because, but they don't understand.
The problem is they engage when
It
crap hits
gets
the
turned on.
fans. Right, when like our friend with the trees down the water right of way exclusion, right? Had to chop all the trees down, right? That's when it got nasty. So
Yeah, I just don't, the only thing I don't like is when people go and take 30, 40 feet of town land and, oh yeah, I'm gonna fence that off and cut my own. That's the only thing that irks me. Otherwise, the only time I think something like this really needs to be like, here's a sticky one, is if it's a safety issue. If the liability, for some, let's take that trench up in the Houston Valley, for example. They've got a planter blocking off a drainage ditch and they're willing to sign up and say, yeah, if I flood out 8 house basements and I'll have to pay for them all because I want this planter. All right, I'll take that risk. I don't think they're trying to take that risk. Right?
I think that planner will be gone.
I think that planter would be gone, right? So a lot of these things, you know, just need to be common sense, letters, just straight up. But it's the safety issue ones for me are just like, those are ones that should be targeted. And the minor ones, they're minor. We don't need to waste our time. We have enough important things to do. So I would go safety issues first. Egregious land grabs with structures on them, second. And then let the rest come in as they do. That'd be me.
Yeah, once one starts doing it,
Yeah.
then
Then it
everybody
takes
else in that
ripple.
block is gonna do it, which
Yeah.
kind of sounds like exactly what happened. One started kind of reaching out and then, oh, well, that must be our property line. Oh, okay.
Like, I didn't get to use my personally paved alleyway for parking. Like, so if I'm held to account, guys, if I'm held to account, then everyone should be held to account.
There's different rules for you.
Well, there was, Brendan, but I was held to account.
Thank you for moving your trailer. He has stopped emailing me for today.
Oh, my
God. You know what I mean? Like, let's go safety and common sense first. And little
Would you
things.
call, sorry, Barry, would you call the utility right away a safety issue? Because I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Right, because if you ever have to get in there,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm coming in with the chainsaw and a backhoe.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Next gone, dude.
yeah, your trailer is in 2 pieces now.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, that was the River Road one.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that would be
Because
me.
then that fence is, yeah, he built all around the fence and.
Yeah,
and
right up
can't
to
get
the
in.
other fence, like.
Yeah, and then built the
It's
privacy wall.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's why it's still there.
So that's my thought. We go with that approach.
Yeah, let her bring back
They
the
spent a
encroachment
lot
bylaw
of money
and
on
our
it.
policy and we'll take a look and, yeah.
Did we give you enough direction for the enforcement piece?
Took.
I think I have a general sense, so thank you for letting me give you a bit of an update. Giving me a bit of a
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to give you some teeth,
2 cents.
you know, like we want, yeah, because we'll support it for sure. I think that's clear.
Conditions are placed on purpose.
The other thing, this enhances the handover, the MPC portion too. Kind of gives it a little more sharp bite. Because at one point, MPC will come back as a committee.
Yeah.
You know, councils from now.
Yeah.
It will. Some will run on it. Anyway, but this, in the meantime, gives the ability for it to happen, right? And for you guys to actually make those decisions.
I trust our planner way better than I trust our NPC.
I just read.
Tell the chair to hold.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to 6.2 civic talk. Verbal update on the auction at town signs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, turn it over to.
So,
I'll bring the good stuff now.
Yeah, now that I've like made you really
Did you see
impressed.
it?
My dear town stories.
Yeah, they told me a couple times, but it's,
Good or bad?
it was good.
Oh, good.
Mostly I've heard nothing but good comments.
Yeah.
we're gonna find out right now where we're at.
Hard to get the tip, but goofballs that.
Thank you. I'm gonna take a quick moment to oblige comments of my own, if that's okay. I want to express my appreciation for Gary with planning. I would say these towns have a plethora of problems with planning decisions from the past that have haunted me and this town and this council and budgets that are just, endless. And since Carrie's come on, her digging in and standing ground and communication with all departments before approvals and processes. It's been really good. So anyways,
For that, my performance should be when they come back.
anyways, municipal signage.
She did give Craig $50 before he spoke.
So the signs took a while to get in place for a number of different reasons. They finally did go in place, and of course, Facebook, without surprise, responded in kind. And I just wanted to give a brief update on the signs themselves, just so we understand what we were talking about. Originally, there was $80,000 for signs. That didn't work out because the tender that came back was ridiculous. If you recall, I'd asked for $12,000 to $15,000 to do it internally. To date, we have spent $10,900. So that's $69,000 remaining from that $80,000. What that got us, our public works guys erected the frames that hold the signs after they purchased and constructed those and installed them. Then that included 3 municipal entrance signs, 1 municipal office sign, and
That dual-side wayfinding sign?
a 2-sided wayfinding sign. So that is what we were able to achieve with that $10,000.
Wow.
That's I got some questions.
Yes.
So there technically is still some money in that budget.
$69,025.
So I really love those, when Black Diamond, just before amalgamation, put those iron signs on the different lampposts coming into town. You know, you got the Black Diamond
Yeah.
with different features in there. We don't have anything like that on the Turner Valley side. And it'd be nice to do something like that. What would also be nice is with that wayfinding that you have, as you come into town, like, so you come across the river, so you have uptown, downtown, whatever it is, however you worded it. On that corner where we have the sign there for people to put whatever message on there, could we incorporate some wayfinding there? So kind of like what we, like, I really like High River and Okotoks, pardon me, they've done a great job with their wayfinding for different public amenities. So somebody coming through, they look over. It's kind of hard to read it all quickly,
Yeah.
but your eye might pick up, oil fields arena, oh, it's down that way. But there's no other indication where it might be. So just a thought. I don't know what those costs would be. A simple signpost, very similar with an arrow.
That don't have GPS.
They may.
I kind of like it for aesthetics, for sure.
I like it for aesthetics.
For
It's
aesthetics,
purely
yeah,
aesthetics.
as long as it's not like too much in your face, like,
No.
you know, if we did 5 over there, 5 here, highlighted some of the key
Yeah.
spots. Town spots.
Yeah.
Library, arena,
Even that reserve land,
Town
Big
office.
Gray or whatever that's called.
Dog
Gray
park.
Gray Reservation Land.
right, right. Yeah, I'd generally be okay with it.
Oh, Carrie, pardon me.
Sorry, quick Google. The new wayfinding signs throughout High River are phase 1 of the project with $400,000.
Oh, I know, they're not cheap. I know we can't come anywhere close to those. I'm just talking about a nice 6x6 post with a, kind of like, you know, the old Western signpost idea? Where, exactly, just very simple posting, like the old Western idea. It's our heritage, it's our roots, right?
I mean, I think if the committee wants it, we can.
Yeah.
Easily bring somebody back.
Yeah, bring something back, just simple.
I do like the unity of having the metal things, because everyone loves those. And I don't know, because we have a different kind of lamp post like this. So I don't even know if it's possible, but those ones I'd be interested, just to
Just on Main Street.
make on Main Street, just a few of them to make it feel equal, right?
Councillor Collins, or
One of the complaints, sorry,
Go ahead, Heather, I'll go after you. I've talked a lot of time.
One of the complaints I got. Well, I got a few of them actually regarding how Black Diamond was decorated for Christmas and those missing post decorations, and I kept saying, well, they're old and, you know, they needed to be repaired. It was too much money to do that. But other than that, I really haven't heard any complaints about signage or anything. I like the idea of the wayfinding. But for the most part, I haven't really heard. I've heard just good things about our new signs.
I got two small things. I'll lead it off if you guys want, just so that we don't. Carrie had a good thing about fatigue. I can easily make a Facebook video and say,
And
We've
we've
got
got
some-
thousand, we've done this.
Yeah.
well, I would start it with that and say, this was the budget. We have $69,000 left over. What would you guys like to see?
Yeah.
What
What
would you-
kind of wayfinding signage or?
Or any, yeah, I
signage
could mention a few things.
Yeah, give
Because one of my second thing is I'd like to see more benches on our walk,
Yeah.
our paths. And I've been wanting to see that since we hosted the summer games. When they gave us that $50,000 check, I thought, man, we should put some, because Gray Park has put some new ones up
Mhm.
around their area. And we do have benches, but if I'm sure Public Works could identify some, you know, some of the corners or some really nice sitting spots over the Beaver Dam, that kind of thing. If we get some quotes for, you know, a bench is gonna run $2,000 or $1,500. If council has the appetite for 5 more benches within the community, if you could identify in a map some spots for that. But I could also mention that in the Facebook video. I think that'd be a great public engagement piece for us.
Just say we save money.
We could save money.
Well, we got
Well, we don't need to spend all 69 either. We could spend another 10 or 20 grand.
frisbee course.
We could put it into that.
Let's get some benches in there.
Yeah, anything like that. I think this money would be well spent, and this is just my point of view, is putting it into the community where it's visible
Mhm.
and it adds to the quality of life here in town. So we have huge walkers, we've got a big population of people that love to get outside. A couple benches, maybe a couple extra garbage cans. I know that might add to you guys, but if we could just put some visible things out there for people to see and enjoy. You know, without building a brand new park or, you know, and those are really small wins. And this is money that we had budgeted for the signs. So I would say, let's save half of it and then let's,
But even just speaking to that, at the top of the Friendship Trail, the bottom of the Friendship Trail, like disc golf. Right there, 2K up or whatever, right?
right, yeah, on the trail, on the
On
walking
the,
trail.
on the walking trail.
Yeah,
That kind of stuff, just
exactly.
because there's so many people that come from out of town.
Yeah.
That use that walking trail, like a vast amount. That's where I would see the greatest value in the wayfinding.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. Would you guys be okay with me doing a Facebook post?
100% do.
Okay, I'll do that hockey one at 3,500 people, so
Nice.
they're crazy right now.
How did your sale go, Craig?
Yeah, so just the last piece on those signs, we just touched them up in the spring once with some fine landscaping because they were pretty rough looking. So on the sale of the old signs, today was the closure, so as I was driving over here, my emails were dinging. So I was getting notifications from Gov Deals on the closure and the bids that came in on those. I don't have a tally or a specific sheet, but a few of those signs have sold.
Nice.
A few of them didn't meet the reserves we placed on them, so I'll be able to put together a list for future update. Yeah, so some success by the looks of it. We may have to repost some of those signs as well, maybe lower our reserves, not sure. I'll figure out what's how close we came to those bids. And we may just say, yeah, close enough and award them. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, that's great.
Thank
And really well done on the signs. Thanks, the boys and the girls.
What was the specific number again? 10,000?
$10,974.
How much we made?
No,
No, that's how much it costs. How much?
to put up all the signs, to put the signs up.
Yeah.
not to sell.
No, what did we come in at?
He doesn't.
I don't know
he
yet.
doesn't.
They were coming in as I was driving up here, so I haven't.
And lots of people saying, it says my bid's not enough. I'm like, you need to bid more. Yeah.
That means
going.
one thing.
It's called an auction.
Yeah, keep going.
Well, we didn't want to sell the products for less than their salvage.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a wise reserve bid.
So Chair, just to kind of summarize this, so administration will bring back a report with some options for some wayfinding, some benches, that sort of thing, and maybe at that point we can just close out and let council know what the final bids were.
That'd be great.
Is that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll do a post and collect some data so that the next time we have this at a regular meeting, I can present some of the options that the residents came up with. I expect that post to be pretty wild. It's gonna be good.
That's how you-
I'll bring screenshots of it and we put them up there.
I'm not telling you how to do your job with that wayfinding, but if they're color coordinated with our signs and the same similar posting, like posts,
Send them in.
like. I think that'd be ideal.
It's nice to.
Beauty.
Okay, our last item,
Last one.
agents of sale discussion 514 and 526 Windsor Ave.
Thanks, Chair. So this, yes, this came from last week and I mentioned we did not have a report since we had a 1-day turnaround, but Carrie put together a little slide deck, so I will throw it over to her.
Okay, and this is where I get to be super awkward. Can I request a 5-minute recess?
100%.
Yes.
I can just start with the preamble.
It's not letting me out of there.
We're selling this property. In case you missed it.
Slideshow.
Everybody
There we
listening?
go.
514 Windsor was redesignated at the last council meeting to R3
You are
to
on.
allow for multifamily development. We are selling it
Okay,
to
three windows.
generate
So
revenue,
you're up on the main screen. Yeah.
to allow for reinvestment,
Is.
expand housing options. And just selling it
Ah,
under
here
utilized
we
land.
are on
Helps
slideshow. Let's try
our
that.
sustainability, helps
Hey.
our urban fabric be more contiguous. So, good financial sense, good planning sense.
Now this.
Just more challenging, so we're recording at the same
There
time,
you
but
go.
screens, so I
used to
can't figure
reading
it out.
Others through her pages.
Yep.
Okay, you can get back to there. Pass this, so. Next, please. Okay, so we are planning to do a competitive sale, which means market value. Next. The general process is you establish what in the heck market value is. Establish the method of sale. Establish how much control council wants over the final built form. Then some particulars about sales contracts and clauses. Obviously, this structure is here and it has some value, so we'll try and sell it and remove it. And then the development and subdivision processes, which are administrative in nature. So, market value. This is one of those subjective things that I love. The MGA requirement is that if a municipality proposes to transfer an interest in land for less than its market value, the proposal must be advertised. Market value means the amount that a property might be expected to realize if it is sold on the open market by a willing seller to a willing buyer. There are a few ways to establish fair market value. We can get a realtor's assessment. Better if we get a few. Leverages the local knowledge of the real estate market, easy to access, relatively inexpensive. We can get a formal market appraisal report, which incorporates a bunch of assumptions and includes comparisons. It is very, very important that administration and council understand what those assumptions are and agree with them, because if we don't, then that might not be reflective of market value. Or the property's tax assessment. There is a standardized methodology by which properties are assessed. And it could be a starting point for a competitive bidding process. The method of sale is going to be important in this one, because again, going back to competitive sale, We do have a policy. I'm starting each section with like your legislative requirements. So Council 09, sale of municipal surplus lands. This policy is not applicable because the purpose is not for parks, and we are hopefully not selling for less than market value. So yay, moving right along.
Easy for you to say turnabout.
Never.
There are a couple
Lessons
options.
learned.
Yeah.
There are a couple options for the sale, so the town staff can act as the agent for the sale. Keeps it in-house, takes some time. We can give it to a realtor, takes the burden away from staff, but they will want their commission, understandably. We can set it to an auction with a reserve price, or we can do proposals. There will be a predefined criteria and a clause that would allow the town to negotiate more than one option before finalizing with the selected developer. And it could account for the financial offer, the alignment of the plan with community goals, and the developer's track record.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, we can sit there for a second.
Would what we were talking about during the public hearing and then during our debate, would that be best reflected by the proposal method? Where we set conditions on what we want the development to look like?
Yes, so in getting some legal advice before bringing this to you, I'm not a realtor. But I have done land sales for municipalities. You can do. It's not a request for proposals per se, but it follows a similar metric that you set the scope, you set the expectations, you have your out clauses. You know, we're not bound to select one, et cetera, et cetera. And then you could potentially say, wow, these two are both really interesting. Let's bring them to the table. Let's talk through with them. And then with the eventual goal of rewarding or moving through the sales process with a successful developer. There is a requirement in the MGA that there's a requirement in the MGA that if you sell for less than market value, you are required to advertise the sale. I mean, I think we want to advertise anyway. So a realtor will want their sign out on the front lawn. If we don't go with a realtor, we'll put our own sign on the front lawn. The town website, we have some social media, the Western Wheel. The MGA requirement is a minimum 2 consecutive weeks. And then obviously the MLS, which most people are familiar with.
It's minimal.
Easier access to the MLS. The realtor, from my experience, again, not many jobs. So. With regards to advertising the proposals, if we go that route, I think it's really interesting. From council's strategic priorities, you do say that prioritizing community engagement is a priority, and you have a public participation policy that requires if the opportunity will add value to the decision-making process due to the nature, significance, scope, and impact of the decision, that we can invoke the public participation plan process. So I would be looking for some direction with this conversation on the community engagement portion, if we would like to retain control. Couple options for that. You can, we're gonna start with the legislative. Legislative, redesignation requirements. The town cannot make a contract that forces council to pass or not pass a bylaw. It is a council decision that cannot be controlled by contract. However, a land sale could be conditional on getting a redesignation. And the contract should clearly state that council isn't required to approve it. So if they had a conditional sale that they get a redes, awesome, either council gives it and the sale goes through, or council doesn't, sale falls through. Some other options to retain control. It is R3. So there's permitted and discretionary uses that come along with R3. Anything that conforms to land use bylaw that's a permitted use is a right. which Barry so eloquently put in our last meeting when he read my mind. Thanks, Barry. I like this because it gives surety to developers and it gives surety to the community that these are things that they can do. You can go DC. DC leaves it purely up to council. However, it gives often very little surety to developers and very little surety to the community. Hence the proposal method. You could possibly make it a DC and then tie it to the plan. A little bit more cumbersome. But it kind of is that middle ground. Where council would still retain a lot of ability to choose the built form, depending on if you do the public engagement method. There may be some input there, understanding that all of this adds time, complexity, potential costs. When we get to the sale, any contract, we've dealt with a couple of those lately. So the conditional sale, we might want to include a redesignation. Definitely want to remove this building and have a clause on there that you have a certain amount of time frame to sell it and have them move it off. Hopefully the purchaser moves it off. Yes.
We put on gov bids.
And then there may be a condition for a phase one ESA. And not saying it's a guaranteed, but it is something I've definitely seen over and over again.
Counselor Thompson.
I think that we had a phase one ESA done,
We do.
when we bought it.
Yeah.
So that's gotta be somewhere, because there was a gas tank here. Might have even gone down to a phase two. I'm not 100% sure, but it should be there.
And it may need to be updated, again, hence the big old question mark.
Yeah,
I finalized this at
Yeah,
4:40.
no worries. I just wanted to let you know, I'm almost,
Thank you.
I'm very sure that we had one done.
ESA stands for environmental study.
Environmental site assessment. So phase one is what is commonly referred to as a desktop study. So they look at aerial photos, they look at information that's available in digital catalogs. They often will do a request for us to search our files, which depending on the site can be very little or very long. And just see if there's anything in there that might hint at contamination, like petroleum
Yeah.
tanks
And the
or.
province had to clean that up too, by the way. For the gas. It was, that the forestry had there,
So hopefully we have some sort of certificate of remediation.
hopefully, yeah,
Well,
somewhere.
we have to, sorry, well, we have to advertise the APCO trailer in the same manner, per se.
It's just a piece of
Yeah.
chattel. And so it would be similar to getting rid of a backhoe, I think.
At a sale price.
Yeah.
Unless we have an interested party to the offer first. Would that be entertained? Or would we have?
Yeah, we could have another conversation on that. We thought, figure this out, come back. I'll kind of map the whole parcel out to council, how we go from here, to the other building, but this one's easy, I think. Okay.
In the sales contract, we'll also likely want something similar to other sales contracts that you may be familiar with. So the commenced development requirement, that contractual clause that says you have X amount of time to get your permit and X amount of time to start or commence development. In our discussion with our lawyer, it was advised to not include a construction completion requirement as it may hamper the ability for the developer to get financing from the financial institution.
Case in point.
There is also, we also had a great conversation about that when they get the money for the actual building, once the approvals are secured, they have a lot of incentive to finish that building because now they have the financing for it. So in theory, there shouldn't be a holdup. And that conversation made a lot of sense to me. Another thing would be the buyback option. Again, we've seen that before. So it is a clause in a contract. It is written as an option. It can be the same, less, or more than the original purchase price. And it can be invoked if the purchaser is in breach of the contract. And it's discretionary because it is an option. And as we've seen from other cases, we typically want to work with our developers because the whole reason we sold it to them in the first place was to get the development. Presumably. Atco trailer, we're gonna sell it. The development and subdivision processes. There's a lot of administration processes, so likely there will be the demolition of the existing buildings. Again, trying to throw this together this afternoon. I don't know if there's offsite levies. I don't know if there's MROing. There are things to look at this point. Potential for subdivision, the servicing, they'll get a development permit. The right of appeal will depend on that land use district. So again, if you're at all enticed by the DC option, remembering that there is no right of appeal in the ATC permit. And then obviously there's safety coast permits. And those are all administrative in nature unless it goes to DC, which is like a weird hybrid monster. Preferences, questions?
Councilor Thompson, I'd just rather go with realtor.
Yeah.
Because I prefer realtor. I don't want to be anywhere near direct control. I've seen the proposals go absolutely sideways in this town. Where a developer is asked for all kinds of extensions and then said they did a whole bunch of work on the land, just like we're facing with the fair. Farm.
St. Ames kind of thing.
Farm,
We're not opposed.
Yeah, we're not.
right. And extensions and then the developers in that case went belly up. And it was the tennis court lands. So that thing's gone through several kind of messes through the years. I just think going with the realtor just takes it off staff's hands and takes it out of council's hands. We've already zoned it R3. If a developer wants to change it, they have to come in and make application to change it. I think it's just simpler and less staff time, and that's the way I'd like to see it go. As far as the ATCO trailer goes, I have a question, would we sell it separate from the,
Yeah, so just to give kind of the context here, the idea is, since we don't want to minimize the moves.
Yep.
We would use, and again, we come back to council, the plan, but we would use a portion of the sales here to renovate the other building. We keep meeting in this trailer until the first floor of the other site is done. So swap where the council chambers are, so you have the window side. Once that is ready, then this could be shipped off. So it could be pre-sold, but we just want to make sure that we're not doing two moves. Council staff then use the first floor when the second floor is being done. So the long-term idea is that the top floor will be all administration, and then the bottom floor would have the staff that work here, utilities, reception center, health and safety, and council chambers will be on the first floor. So that makes it a lot more accessible for the public as well. So the idea there then is you have the administration building that, you're gonna get another good 20+ years out of. It's set, get a good chunk of change from this, and then we can redeploy it for reserves. But if there's a few moving parts, so basically that sales contract would depend on how quickly we can get the first floor done, and we think we can do it in a couple months.
I just go down the line here, Chris.
Sure. I'm not in favor of DC. Realtor works for me. That's totally fine. Don't want your cut, but
it's not on our staff, no.
yeah. I do like the proposal idea as well, but I'll fall back on R3. Anyone who's buying this property is gonna have a vision of multifamily. So I don't think we need to force the issue so much with control as when they come, if they could give us an idea. So I don't know if that's a form of proposal. But I think the R3 is gonna cover all the bases, and there's a lot of work here. But if they buy an R3 and they just wanna live in that house, that's an issue. So how to get past that would be my question.
And so that would be the clause requiring a development permit for a permitted use in the R3 district, sensing development.
Sale.
So then that would be.
It would form part of the purchase agreement.
Require that.
Realtor. Oh, it's.
Realtor, but it's interesting talking about this and then reading the MDP agenda. Is that public?
That is.
That is a public document. So it's interesting in there, it talks about, at 16 units per acre is where you break even or start being profitable, right? And then it showed at 17 acres, Prairie Sound townhouses in High River, which was actually our first house that we bought as a young married couple with a 3-year-old, right? And to me, this is the one chance, because we own it and have control over it, to actually say, we believe we need more housing types and more density, and this is where the town actually makes money. So I can't see why we wouldn't put that into action and say it needs to be, a certain density or a certain type of housing form that we're missing in this town. And I've watched the real estate ads for the last 10 years living here, and there's duplexes over here in the Cloud Meadows area, and even just those the 4plex, the 2-story ones just on the other side of here, they never come for sale, right? They'll sell before they make it the open market or whatever. We are missing the young family house type, the row house housing type. We're totally missing. And so when I hear someone say, oh, we want to come and do R1N and put some trailers or whatever on, that gets me, that frustrates me, because I think we're missing, and our school numbers, since Country Meadows has gotten more built out and the kids are getting older, we're missing the young families that, that come to get a starter home, they send their young kids to the elementary school, and then they buy, they move up and combine their forever home, like a bigger single detached. But we need that turnover, the young people to keep our school revitalized. So to me, I want to have more control over it, but I don't know if council does. But to me, it should be the minimum density that's going to be profitable to the town moving forward. Otherwise, what are we talking about for sustainability to everybody else?
I agree.
John?
Correct me if I'm wrong, we're having this discussion because during the debate, we wanted to put conditions on the sale.
Yeah.
As far as the build out. So for me, 100% use a realtor, local realtor to gain the appraisal to conduct a sale, but we do a proposal sale. We have those conditions listed, speaking of what Cindy just said about what we want to have built out here, and we move forward that way.
So 2 comments. One is hearing from some of the developers and some of the conversations that have been happening with our subdivision officer and our development officers is the cost of fees, levies, servicing, etc. Unless it's really, really easy to just drop a second line for a duplex. Often there's a critical mass of units that they need just to make the servicing worth it. So the Lions Club is a great example. Yes, there's a bunch of duplexes, but there's also an apartment. If you're gonna start digging in the ground to put services in, you need a certain number of units. The other thing that I find interesting, and it's more of a personal observation you were sharing, is starter home anymore is completely unattainable for most people under 35. Unless you come from money, a starter home is like $500,000, $500,000. And so I think that, there's a great chance that we do get a proposal for an apartment. I think that we sorely need apartments, and I'm just gonna go here. We don't regulate users, we regulate use, but I would love for it to not be seniors. I know that they're a very important demographic in our community, but so are the young people who are graduating high school that you want out of your basement to start their own family to then buy the $500,000 home in the future.
Start somewhere.
Well, even that development, that R3 that we approved on George, that's.
That had
geared-
2 apartments.
Had 2 apartments, had some townhouses, had duplexes. That's really geared towards a younger generation who can't afford the 500,000. So that's why I propose that we do go down that proposal route so that we can have an input into what comes here.
I agree with that.
Because there's, I mean, we have that Black Diamond housing study that we're just really scratching the surface of. So let's be proactive here and what really meets the needs of our community.
If you're less concerned about the architecture and more concerned about the density, there is an option to do another land use bylaw amendment that would stipulate a minimum density for the lots.
And what would that be, Carrie?
So you actually removed it last week for, the 415 Royal Ave.
Yeah.
So there was a condition in there that had to be a certain unit per hectare.
Yeah.
In certain forms. I'm probably go that specific, but I would say that the parcel needs to meet a certain density of 23 units per, or something of that nature.
How
So-
many units do you think you would be able to get on?
I haven't done the math,
How
but
many acres is this?
I'd imagine more than 30.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Counselor Holden?
yeah, I am concerned because this is the established neighborhood with R1 housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, such bad
Yeah.
apartments. The thing I liked about the row houses with Seclusion Valley, it was one entrance in, all the parking, it was all single car garages underneath, that's 2-story up above. They were fantastic floor plans, but, it was because it didn't impact the neighborhood. It was all really nice condo yards around it. And because it was built up, so it looked like just a regular 2-story house on the front. Those to me will get less pushback than, do you know, have you been up there? Okay. Yeah. And because all the parking is hidden in the interior, you drive into the center section and you had nice exterior landscaping, you didn't get the pushback. They looked great next to, like, right across from the one from us was like the 700,000 at the time houses on the lake. And it didn't feel weird,
Are
right?
they freehold or bare land? I don't know.
I can't
Because the
remember.
way our land use bylaw, that's the one concern I have with our land use bylaw on page 68, when it shows maybe 67, shows the comprehensive residential dwelling. This would be an ideal lot for that. However, the minute you come off Windsor, it has to have an internal road and it has to be titled to bare land condo, which means you're gonna have the condo association, you're gonna have, and they're not the easiest to develop. Whereas if there was some way that we could do a comprehensive dwelling where it didn't require the bare land condo, where they were just all freeholds, that would be supreme. Because I think you could get quite a few units in here.
But yeah, I don't know if you get that many more units per acre than, because they were all like 600 square foot, 700 square foot footprints. I don't think you'd get that much more. And as soon as we say apartment building, we get pushback versus, you know,
I don't
and
think
Okotoks has a bunch of them, the 2-story up above a single garage underneath.
Yeah, it's a
right?
3-story, so you drive in, there
Yeah.
might be a bonus room, like an office on the
Yeah,
ground floor, and then you usually have your living, kitchen, dining, and then the 2 or 3 bedrooms up top.
yeah, but the outside facing all the streets and all the other houses looks like a normal 2-story, right, on the front side. The same 3-story on the back. That's literally the case, the pictures that they use in the MDP package tomorrow night. So I found that interesting, but to me, this lot is perfect for that kind of development. And I think you get less pushback from saying we're gonna put an apartment building.
And so I guess, sorry if I may, Yeah, so I guess the question to council then is the development of this lot is manhandling the fine details a council priority and a strategic play for the town? Or is it something that you can leave to your bylaws and the market?
I'd say to the bylaws on the market.
That's
So-
because it's a
So to that,
developer knows what they can build here.
to that point, Heather, R3 allows for an apartment up to 30 feet high. And the market.
But Carrie said that you can put conditions on the,
But that doesn't go with what she just said. She said, do we want to add the conditions or do we want to trust the bylaws?
but the conditions of the sale for R3, it's still R3, but
R3 allows apartments.
yes, it does, but you could make it conditional that it would be row housing or whatever versus an apartment. You could say no to an apartment condition.
But that,
So,
that's the proposal, not the bylaw.
so realtor proposal,
Realtor's proposal.
realtor with the proposal so that we can add the conditions to the sale.
Exactly.
And I think the density has to be above the, if we're selling it as a town, the density has to meet what actually makes a town money sustainably in the long run. Otherwise, we're not.
Would we also do this by
Then you're
that?
gonna change the structure of the area.
Yep, they have to go.
So then- You're gonna have
Pardon me,
an overlap.
well, especially here, this is an older neighborhood myself. I would rather see like you have, if you had like the condos like they have up at the place. And they're very nice and they get very good, taxes too.
They don't meet the density.
It might only get 60, maybe.
Yeah. They won't meet the density. I think we need to lead by example.
Mayor Payne?
Okay, so you're looking for what we want as an answer.
If we are going to move forward with selling this property, we need to know what form that is going to take on.
So I heard you three say propose, or realtor with proposal.
Yeah.
Was that the proper
Yep.
phrase?
Yep.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
So there's four.
There's 4.
Over to you.
Move to council.
I would go with, realtor and go with your bylaws and land use plan.
Okay, Heather?
Realtor. I don't wanna see an apartment here, so I'd have to go the other way
You have to go with the
So-
proposal.
with the proposal, but I also don't wanna see it super dense.
No.
Because it's out of the character of the community that it's sitting in.
Yeah, it's
And I don't know why we have to go by that. We have to consider the character of the community it's going into.
But that's why we say no apartment.
No,
And then we
I
go to
know,
row
but
housing.
you don't need to go high density just because. The character of the community doesn't. You can't build rows and rows of townhouses, 3 stories high. What's the difference? You may as well put an apartment up.
Adam.
Thanks, Chair. So, if the MVP, just correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, but tomorrow night, the committee is going to actually, the question's going to be on the table for which the 3 options we're going for.
Yeah, so for those listening. The municipal development plan steering committee second workshop is tomorrow night. It is a publicly open meeting. However, the public cannot engage. One of the topics on the table will be the discussion of density, so discussion of financial solvency, environmental sustainability, political versus, basically political versus economics. There won't be anything to govern if you can't afford it. And I also hear often that council doesn't want to be Okotoks or Calgary. So then you have to raise taxes, but nobody wants taxes, so that's all gonna be the fun and games for tomorrow night.
So we just to tie it into Carrie, so I'm just trying to, like, we could, I mean, the committee could just put a motion for council to vote on it at the next meeting. it's one option, but with a realtor with options coming back was part of that. I mean, say if we got 2 or 3 proposals, we bring that back and those proposals might actually have a range of density. Maybe one proposal would have 50 units, maybe one would have 30. Is that fair to say, or?
Yeah,
Just trying to-
so my intention with this is, it does need to be a decision of council. So it will come back to council's desk that you direct us to sell the land with the realtor. And we will put out a proposal process. And I'll throw together some criteria that I've kind of heard. I'll see how close or far off I am in the discussion at council. And hopefully we get a motion out of that, that then we can move forward in a deliberate way.
I need a motion right now that we recommend this comes back to council or?
Yeah.
So
I think we're pretty clear on that.
I just don't like having to try and shoot in the dark.
No, it's all good.
No,
That's what these committee of the whole are all about.
okay,
Thank you.
we adjourn?
Yeah.
Are we doing anything with